Wisp Sports Radio, the voice of women in sport.
Hello, and thank you for downloading Transcending Sport here on Wisp Sports. I'm Chris Stafford, and this show tells the stories of individuals and organisations that are furthering sport among women and girls across a whole sector of industry, media, and non-profit organisations. My guest today is Dr. Juliet McGratten, who was a general practitioner for 16 years before she decided to hang up her stethoscope and follow her passion, using medical knowledge and experience to improve the health of women through physical exercise. She published her first book, Sorted, The Active Women's Guide to Health, in 2017 and won first prize in the popular medicine category at the 2018 British Medical Association Medical Book Awards. Juliet is the resident health expert for Women's Running UK magazine and a regular contributor for other publications. She is the women's health lead and master coach for the 261 Fearless Global Network, which was founded by pioneer marathon runner Kathrine Switzer to empower women to find courage through running. Juliet is the founder and director of 261 Fearless Club UK and a founding member and coach of her local clubs, 261 Fearless Club Lune Valley and 261 Fearless Club Lancaster. She worked for 3 years for Public Health England as the lead champion for physical activity in the northwest of England. And we will hear how she loves to run, from 5K to marathon races. She says, "I'm not a fast or a hugely accomplished runner, but to me, that's not important. Running and sport in general is all about fun. I want to get as many people out of their chairs as possible and experiencing the joy and benefits that exercise brings." And we'll find out some of the ways she does that through her active health campaign and her website. Thank you for joining me. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here.
Tell us a little bit about where you're based, because you're not from the north of England, but you are based there now. How did you get up there?
Yes, I grew up in the south of England, and with my job and university, I did quite a lot of travelling around, up to Shetland, across to New Zealand, and then finally found my home in the north of England with the intention of being near the beautiful Lake District, because I love climbing in the hills and being outdoors. So it's a really wonderful place to have kind of ended up, if you like.
I can imagine. And running is your sport of choice?
It is. It hasn't always been. I grew up dancing. Ballet, tap, every kind of dance you could imagine. And I tried running a few times and I actually thought it was awful. Everything hurt, my knees hurt. But I came back to it after I'd had my third child. That was now 11 years ago, and I've stuck with it ever since. And I can honestly say it has changed my life.
Well, you've also changed your life in terms of, being a GP. You trained as a doctor, being a general practitioner. And now you're really campaigning for an active lifestyle. I want to talk a little bit about that as well, Juliet. But let's just talk about your running and why it's changed your life. What was the conversion factor here?
I think it was when I started, it was a time in my life when I didn't feel like I had very much control. I had 3 children who were preschool. My youngest had just been born, and I was sort of at their mercy. And everything I did was for everybody else. I was trying to work amongst all of this as well. And running just gave me a little bit of time to myself. No headphones, no pressure, just a space. And that little space only started off when I was beginning to run with maybe 20 minutes at a time, but gradually expanded. And in that time, I began to be able to think a bit more clearly about my life and what I wanted, solve problems. And I realized how powerful running was physically, but most importantly, mentally. And I think that's the gift that it gave me, the ability to just, headspace, time to think, and through that refocus actually what I want in life.
And you've gone on to be quite competitive in the sport now. Talk a little bit about your career highlights, where it's taken you, where you've competed, and what your personal bests are.
Yes, I would. I'm competitive by nature, but I'm not particularly speedy or able runner. So I'm only ever competing against myself, really. But I've run distances 5K up to marathon. I think marathon distance probably is my favourite. Although at the moment I'm thinking I might have a little break from doing some marathons. So my most memorable marathons, I think, have been London Marathon, which was my first one. There's nothing quite like your first marathon. I think you reach this point where you suddenly realise you can do anything you put your mind to. I always wanted to run it when I was a child and never really did much about achieving that goal until later in life, but you couldn't beat that. And then I think my other highlight would be Boston. I ran Boston in 2017, and it was the 50th anniversary of Kathrine Switzer running the Boston Marathon back in '67, when the official tried to eject her from the course, and I was honoured to actually run in Kathrine's 261 Fearless team in Boston. And although I started the race with her, I went on ahead after a while, then crumbled, and then in the last 2 miles, Kathrine caught me up, and I ended up running down Boylston Street celebrating her 50th anniversary and crossing the finish line at the same time as her, which was the noise on Boylston Street when Kathrine Switzer's running through the streets of Boston is something to behold. So it's one of those moments that will stay with me for life. That wasn't my fastest marathon. My fastest is 4:25, and I did that in Manchester last year. So by no means in the record books, but an improvement for me.
Well, that's fabulous. I mean, what a historic moment for you with Kathrine.
Yeah, it was incredible. My children were at home in England and sending me messages, "Mummy, you're on the television." I think they thought I was the star running down, but I clearly knew that all eyes were on Kathrine.
Yeah, that's amazing. So how many marathons would you have done now, Juliet?
I've done 10 now. Mostly international ones, actually. So Boston, I've done Reykjavik in Iceland, which was wonderful. Girls' trip to Malaga for the marathon there, and a few in the UK as well. So, yeah. But I thought I'd have a little break and drop down to some halves for a while and try and get a little bit quicker.
So you have a strategy then. You're looking at the big picture now. You're taking this very seriously because obviously it's become a passion for you. It's liberating, as you said, to go out there and just run for miles and miles and miles and be totally in your own space. But you've become very competitive.
I don't know that I have really. As I say, only competitive with myself. And I think when you say thinking about the bigger picture, yes, I am. And I guess my bigger picture is the fact that my aim is to be able to run for years to come. So I want to run well, and I want to avoid injury, and I want to be able to take running with me through my life, and with a bigger aim of running long distances still when I'm older. So I think that's my particular aim. I do a lot of the running I do is completely non-competitive, actually, and is all about helping other women to run, which I get as much satisfaction from as my own running.
Do you mind saying where you are in the lifespan now for some reference for our listeners?
Yes, of course, yes. I'm 47, so
right.
Don't think I've quite hit the menopause, but I've been writing a lot about it recently. I've been really I feel very genned up and ready for that next phase of life, which I know is heading my way. Right.
Now, as a general practitioner, you are all about preventative medicine, I'm sure, and finding that, any athletic pursuit, for the most part, is going to lead to a healthier lifestyle. Let's talk a little now about your website, Kathrine, because, sorry, I'm calling you Kathrine now.
That's an honour.
Isn't it? How about that? So, Juliet, when you look at your website, which is terrific, I love your website because you've laid it out so beautifully. It's very easy to reference, and you've got you focus on those key topics, and a lot of really great questions there. Everyday questions. I'm sure the kind of questions that as a GP you would have got all the time.
Yes, definitely, and I think that's what I really wanted to try to provide, just somewhere for those kind of questions. Sometimes the questions that GPs don't know the answers to either, because they're questions that come up about being active, and unless you're a GP with a particular interest in sport or activity, sometimes those kind of questions, nobody teaches you the answers, so you have to delve and you have to go and look for those answers. So I wanted to provide somewhere that would just give some kind of direction and advice to people on little niggly matters that can sometimes be game changers, really, even though they're quite small.
Yes, and they are like little niggling things that you think, oh, I can't go out today, the hay fever's bothering me, or, I've got period cramps, or, oh, I've got a bit of a cold, I'm not sure I should be running if it's raining. Things like that affect us every day, don't they? I mean, and this is addressed mainly at women, isn't it, to get them more active?
It is, and I think that's sort of where I found my passion, really, was helping other women to be active. I wrote a book to put lots of this advice into a book, which again, it's called Sorted: The Active Women's Guide to Health, and it's all these kind of niggly things down in a easy to use, almost a reference type book that people can access. But I think it's not that I'm trying to exclude men. I think there are just many issues that particularly affect women, and I wanted to create something that was specially for them.
Well, you really are doing that, and I think these days when we find that women can be more active in so many different ways, there's when you look back to sort of, even 50 years ago, you would only think, oh, maybe I could go running, jogging, or yoga, or go to the gym. Tennis, swimming, those sort of mainstream sports. But now there is so much available to us to compete or just to involve ourselves with recreationally and just for our health. So have you seen an increase in women participating, or are you still bemoaning the lack of activity amongst the mainstream?
When you look at the stats in the UK, the number of women that are being active has increased. That's partly due to campaigns going on in the UK, such as This Girl Can, run by Sport England. Although, again, looking at the stats, the women are still more inactive than the men. So there is still some gender unbalance, but it is better. And you sometimes wonder, is it just the world and the people that you surround yourself with or not? But you do really get the feeling, or I get the feeling, that things are changing and it is becoming more normal, more accessible. And as you say, not just about running. You can do anything around here. You can do archery, you can do netball, you can go back to hockey. So many things opening up, which is wonderful to see. And I feel like the tide is starting to turn. I was doing, alongside my GP work, I used to be a champion for physical activity with Public Health England, and we were teaching, running workshops and lectures for medical staff to help educate them about speaking to patients about being active, because it wasn't ever something that was really covered at medical school. And we've seen so many more conversations involving healthcare professionals and patients. So I definitely do feel that the tide is turning, which is wonderful to see, but we still have a lot to do.
It's interesting, the different sectors of society that can get more engaged now in activity through these various programs that are available to them. But we go back to schools, Juliet, don't we, when look at the dropout rate amongst teenage girls, which happens, I understand, as much in the UK as it does here in the States. And I know these programs are helping to keep girls active, but what do you think is the key turning points for these young girls? What turns their head and takes them away from sport, sometimes not to come back for years or maybe only later in life?
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? Because I feel very much now with the work that I'm doing with 261 Fearless and running clubs that we're picking these women up later. They've left sport, as you say, at that critical age at school. And then years later, after they've had children, we're then picking them up and trying to make them feel that they can do it and that sport is for them. So somewhere in that journey, in at that teenage years, there's so much going on, isn't there? That your body's changing. People, the conversations have been having with young girls, and some quite important work done by women in sport as well, looking at what it is in those teenage years that puts girls off. And very often it's a feeling that they're on a stage, that they're being watched all the time, that there isn't anywhere suitable for them to change, that they don't like the kit they're wearing, that it's too competitive, all sorts of external factors that really just make them feel that it's not for them. It's not cool to be sporty. They don't want to get muscly. There's so many sort of social pressures as to how they should look and feel. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's a difficult challenge, and there is a lot of work going on, but it almost has to be two-pronged. It needs to come from the early years and assisting those girls in their teenage years at school, but it's also wonderful to look at the side when I'm looking at with providing amazing role models, providing mums and peers in families who activity is part of normal life and it's just what they do and they enjoy it together, and focusing on the enjoyment and trying to make it a social sport.
Yeah, you touched on a couple of things there, Juliet. One of which, of course, is body image when you're a teenager too. That can be a very limiting factor, can't it?
Definitely. And I mean, we know that actually if you ask the girls what they want to wear, for example, when they're doing sport, and actually include them in the choices of what the kit should look like, that they feel much more comfortable and confident to do it. But also, again, not this fear that if you do sport, you're going to get bulky or you're going to get too muscly, can be a real strong pressure for girls as well.
And, of course, that's before they realise that there's a sport out there for them where they don't have to get very muscly and they can just look healthy without having, mass of muscle mass that they would consider unattractive. The other point you mentioned there, you just touched on, was parents. And, of course, more parents now are active for longer. Mm-hmm. Is that changing the tide of how young girls consider sport, their attitude to sport, if their parents are engaged in activities or even professional sports, of course, but I'm thinking just recreational, a little bit competitive like yourself?
I hope so. I don't have any studies to quote you on that, but we do know that role models can be very powerful, and what goes on in a family is really important. It's very interesting because, again, some statistics from Public Health England show that actually children are less active at the weekends. So we blame school a lot of the time for children being inactive, but actually time spent at the weekends, children of all ages are more likely to be inactive than they are during the week. So it shows really how important the right family environment and encouragement really is. Personally, and from personal anecdotes, we do everything we can in my family and my friends, etc., to try and encourage our children to join in and do it together as a family, so it becomes something that we can enjoy together.
I'm just remembering back when I was in my teens and I was just sports mad, Juliet, and I overdid it. My GP actually had to stop me because I was just growing so fast and I was doing too much for my growth rate. Have you come across that?
Sadly, not. Well, not sadly, because it's not a good thing, but not really. I think that is the minority. We're also very fortunate in the UK with athletics training for juniors as well, and the advice that's given to coaches about how much children should do, because sometimes, as you say, it is tempting to do too much too young. So we have kind of some professional bodies here who do advise really well on that, which hopefully will help children to grow up healthy and avoid injury. It's difficult, isn't it, because your capacity and your desire to do it is so strong at that age, and it's understanding that rest is important part of recovery.
Yeah, I know, it broke my heart when they told me I had to have 2 months off, no run, no physical activity. I just thought it was a lifetime, 2 months then. I
can imagine. My young son is a competitive runner, and actually, if he has to miss one training session, he's in a bad mood.
Yeah, it's amazing, your perception of time as well when you're younger. Now, the other thing about children, I want to focus on children because I think this is so important, young girls, and the reasons why they don't continue in sport at that critical time in their teenage years. And the other is peer pressure as well. And also, I think, potentially, of course, they're starting to be attracted to boys particularly. But if they're attracted to girls, it doesn't stop them and their interest in sports so much, does it?
I don't know. I need to turn that back to you. Is that something that you've...
I think it's interesting. It's just a social perception here that boys seem to turn the girls' heads, and they feel they have to sort of glam up to be attracted to boys. And being involved in sport is not going to help their physical attraction to boys at that time. Of course, it's to us adults, it's a false perception. But I wonder how real it is, because if they're not interested in boys, and we find more are in that comfort zone now where they're finding their own sexual identity too in their teenage years.
I think it is difficult, and whereas in the younger years, perhaps girls and boys sport is often more mixed at a very young age. When you get to those teenage years, very often you do get this division between boys and girls of sport, and then perhaps the more competitive element comes in, and the view that if you're sometimes you don't want to be really good at something because you can feel like you're showing off, and that can sometimes people think that can be unattractive too. I think it's a very confusing and such a difficult time to through those teenage years to just find what's right for you, and the influence of the peers around you and what your friends are doing and what the other sex is doing as well is so crucial.
Yeah, they're all influential factors, of course, as are parents. So I'm sure what you're doing in trying to get women active as well, you're educating them as parents and how they can keep their children active. Talk a little bit about that engagement that you have with women, and at what sort of age groups you're looking at to retain women to be active, and even find a sport like yourself later in life where you can actually be competitive, one that you'll enjoy.
So running is my main, as you mentioned before, is my main sport, and I think a lot of women think they can't run, especially, as you say, from those teenage years when they perhaps stop doing sport, and a lot of women actually want to run. Not all do, and that's fine, but a lot of women want to, but they lack the courage to try because they think they can't do it. So really what I'm trying to do is to provide an environment where they feel they can have a go. As I mentioned before, I'm working with 261 Fearless on social running groups. So these are weekly runs where the main focus is not on running, it's on being together and enjoying activity, and it's completely non-competitive. Now that actually attracts women of all different ages. We do have club members who are younger, but when I say younger, sort of in their 20s, but we have a large number of women who are around their 40s, 50s and 60s. And actually to discover that they can do something that they never thought they could do is incredibly empowering. And when they find that they can do that, they then often go off and have the confidence to try other sports. It may be that they go off road and do trail running, or some of them have a go at triathlon, and they just develop this new confidence to try other things. And then they find something that may not be the running, but that actually kind of fires them up. And then they can take that on their own journey going forwards.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I was speaking this week to a woman, and we have a show called The Bolder Woman, which is about competitive women over the age of 50. And some of these stories are quite amazing, Juliet, that when they've come to a sport, discovered a sport that maybe never heard of even, much less participated in, much later in life, and they're fitter now at 75 than they were at 50. It's extraordinary that the stories that we're hearing, also of a woman at the age of 103, she's still breaking records track and field.
I saw that on social media. Amazing. Yeah. It's amazing. And I think also what it does is it's bringing women together because they can encourage each other. So meeting every week isn't necessarily so much, it's not necessarily the activity that draws them, it's the fact that they're going to see other women and spend time with them, and they motivate and encourage each other along. And that social side of things is really, really important in attracting those women who perhaps don't have as much confidence in their own ability to exercise.
Yes, I think as you said, and the reason why you've got this group, this 261 group, it is about that social engagement, isn't it? And you're not going into a sweaty gym with a lot of men. You're actually going into an environment, a healthy environment, and people do love the outdoors, don't they? I think you said it was the reason why you moved to be near the Lake District, so you could be outdoors. A lot more people look to that just as a healthy alternative now and don't need to be competitive. But so I think there's a lot of things that you're doing, really, sending that message about being active. And I think I've encouraged you to do a podcast, a series of shows with a series of episodes to share the knowledge that you have and the expertise and advice to engage women to being active. So looking forward to that. So give us a sense of those sort of topics that you might be covering, Juliet.
Yes, I think it's important to perhaps cover the things that are a little bit harder to find the answers to. So questions that come up that you have to try and Google and then piece together bits and pieces to find the answer. So simple everyday things that might affect your ability to exercise. So why does my nose run when I exercise? How can I stop needing to visit the toilet every time I go for a bike ride? What can I do about my periods affecting my exercise? All those kind of little topics that we can touch on and just give some, brief, quick, every day, try this kind of advice to hopefully keep everybody out there enjoying their exercise and sport.
I think that's terrific and much needed too. So we're looking forward to sharing that here on the network. I think we're going to call it Active Health. Why not?
Perfect.
All right, let's do that. Well, Julie, any final tips for any of the women listening here today are thinking, okay, maybe I should have a go at running. Maybe I should, maybe the kids are off to school or college and it's time now for me to revisit being active and how they could get started. Any tips for doing that?
I would be hugely encouraging, and I would say you will never regret it. All you've got to do is just take the first step. And very often taking the first step is easier if you've got somebody to do it with you. So find a friend, have a look at what's on in your local community. There will be lots and lots more things now for beginners. And just go once and have a try. And you'll be surprised how amazing it makes you feel. And you'll have this special tool that you can use all the way through life to keep you healthy and well. And
it's a wonderful sort of female bonding moment too, isn't it?
Definitely. So I've got some amazing memories, and everybody can create memories as they go on their fitness journeys.
All right, maybe we could get some podcasts out of that. I don't know if you listened to Fortunately with Fee and Jane on the BBC podcast. It's a wonderful podcast. Fee Glover and Jane Garvey.
I have heard, yes.
Yeah, and it's just absolutely hilarious. And they sit down in the BBC Piazza there and just chat about anything and everything. And I could see you doing that with your group. How about that for a podcast?
We could see whether they were up for it. We might have to use some bribes, but we'll see what we can do.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on the show, Juliet. And we're very much looking forward to your own podcast here on Wisp Sports. So, again, thank you for your time, and let's get women active.
It's been a pleasure. Yes, let's do it.
Full Time, The Soccer Show with Katie Stengel, only on Wisp Sports.
So stay tuned for the Active Health podcast coming to the Wisp Sports Network very soon. In the meanwhile, don't forget you can always check out the show notes accompanying this episode if you want to find out more information about Dr. Juliet McGratten and the program that she runs on her website. That's all at wispsports.com, and you can also find links to her social media as well. And do feel free to comment or send us any questions you may have for this new show, Active Health. We want to hear from you, so drop us a line to info@wispsports.com. And we will make sure to get those to Dr. Juliet McGratten. And of course, you can also join in the conversation by following us on social media at Wisp Sports. And if you're looking for any inspirational motivation to get active, then do take a listen to the Bolder Woman podcast here on Wisp Sports, which tells the stories of women over 50 who are still competitive in a range of sports. There's some great stories there. That's on the Bolder Woman podcast here at Wisp Sports, wherever you get your podcasts. We do, of course, appreciate you downloading this podcast and supporting Wisp Sports and women in sport everywhere. Until the next time, thank you for listening. Goodbye for now.